Welcome back to the Fans First Network. You didn't think we were gonna leave you without doing the U.S. Open. We did French Open, we did Wimbledon, and now we're on to the U.S. Open. We're in here a little bit late. A full disclosure: we're recording this on Monday night. I've seen the results to 2 matches so far, none of which are very consequential. I'll reveal them as I'm doing my picks. But we're ready to roll with picks. The action is heated up today. It started. I'm looking forward to catching up on what's going on. But just so the viewers know, we do not know what's gone on today or if anything's affected. I'm fully expecting that whoever I pick to win this probably lost today.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that all the athletes that are watching this who are rooting for us to pick them to lose, because I know that FAA is definitely not looking for me to try to pick him to go far, because I called him to win Wimbledon and he got beat in the first round. So I'm sure some of the players are rooting for you to take them far, Steve. They are not rooting for me to take them anywhere. So.
Yeah, I don't know if they want me to either. I think by the time we got to the round of 16 in Wimbledon, I had pretty few amount of people left. There was kind of surprises all over Wimbledon, and it just fell apart for me at the end there. And I don't think any of the women's side want me to take them. We did, however, just to recap, we did nail the Wimbledon winner, both of us. We picked Novak Djokovic. I know, not that hard. We went chalk on that. And we did pick Nadal for the French Open. So we're 2 for 2 on the men's side. Again, not a really challenging feat, but we did it. And the other one is Iga Swiatek. We had her in the French, so we picked that right for the French Open. I went a little off the board. The one thing I'll give myself some credit for is I did say Swiatek wasn't going to win Wimbledon, and I was right about that. But I also said Ostapenko was going to win it, and Ostapenko, I think, was out by either the round of 16, maybe even 32. So wasn't a great pick. I also said Ostapenko, Jabeur were kind of so I kind of put a square around them. Jabeur got to the finals, but Rybakina, she announced her arrival in the tennis scene. So that makes things a lot more fun heading into the U.S. Open.
Yeah, the thing about the U.S. Open that I love is it feels as though every major kind of has their own unique trait. And when I think of the U.S. Open, I think of passion. So for me, looking on both the men's and the women's side, I think that the atmosphere at the U.S. Open is second to none. And there's going to be some passion plays coming out. And I'm excited to get into this.
I'll go back to 2 historic U.S. Opens that I recall. One was last year, when Djokovic was going for winning all 4 Grand Slams. And I'll go back to the Serena when she was trying to win all 4 Grand Slams. To me, the one thing that stands out about the U.S. Open is it's the 4th one, obviously. A lot has happened. It's been a grind. They play 2 1,000 tournaments before they get here in Cincinnati and in Canada. The players are not fresh when they get here. They are grinding. And the ones who can dig the deepest and play the best on hard courts are usually the ones that stand out here. And in the past, that does not necessarily mean that you get a favorite. I believe Djokovic has only won 2, maybe 3 U.S. Opens. I think it's only 2. I know Federer won 5 in a row. I think Nadal's won 3 or 4 too. But none of those guys out of the big 3, the U.S. Open is not the highest one for any of them. You know, you've got Federer at Wimbledon, you've got Djokovic at the Aussie Open, and you've got Nadal at the French. The U.S. Open's always kind of been this like crapshoot where all of a sudden somebody jumps up and next thing you know, you have, you know, one of the big 3 are out or only one of them makes the finals. So I think that's what's been fun is in this dominant age of tennis, it has been that tournament where it's like you've gotten to the end and sometimes those guys don't have enough left to win them. So that, I think, a big part of what makes this tournament interesting.
This tournament is great because you hit it on the head. Who can get across the finish line? It's been a grind. And you pointed this out in our communication leading up to the U.S. Open. The Cincinnati event is fantastic. And some of those second round matchups felt like big time semifinal or quarterfinal matches that you see in a major. So a lot of the athletes coming into this, they had to go through a grind and it wasn't too long ago. So who's going to have the most legs to get through 5 sets and win all these matches? It's going to be interesting.
Not only that, but the players really feel like they need to play these 1,000s. A lot of them get after it, and they happen kind of back to back. That the Montreal 1,000 and the Cincinnati 1,000 kind of happen rapid fire. And like you said, the fields are so deep. It's fun to see that like second, third round to just see, you know, guys start going out left and right. And on the women's side too, in Toronto, it's like people start going on left and right, and all of a sudden you look up in the quarters, you're like, where is everybody? And who are these people who are left? So that'll be a lot of fun, and it carries over to this. We'll get started on the women's side, and what we've been doing here, we'll continue to do, which is, pick out some of your 4 or 5 favorite bets on the women's side, and then we'll kind of work from there. Then we'll go through the U.S. Chances and possibilities, and then from there we'll pick our. I think we'll go 16 all the way down to the final and go from there. Do you want to start off with some of your favorites for what you have? Maybe your favorite 2 or 3 picks that you have from the women's side.
Once again, and I know this is kind of a broken record, I'm going to go with what I call the A&A tennis factory of Anisimova. I think, she has a chance here to do some things, and she made the quarterfinals at Wimbledon. She hasn't had a lot of great showings at the US Open, but I kind of think that this is the time to get behind her. I really like the matchups that she has early. I think she can get some momentum. I think playing at the US Open and the fact that she hasn't had a great track record here before, I think she's motivated coming in. And then the other one that I always like on this surface, hardcourt specialist, who her 5 best appearances have been on hard court at two Aussie championships and 3 finalists. She was in the finals 3 times at the US Open. I'm going to go Azarenka again. I know she's getting up there in age, but I also think that she's got to draw. You may look at it and say, oh, there's some tough matchups, but I think the matchups that she has are against some big names that might not be as good on this surface, though. So Anisimova and Azarenka are a couple that I'm looking at out of the gate.
Well, and we know Azarenka is one of those players who I'm almost more scared when she plays somebody who's like not seeded than I am when she plays somebody who is seeded. She's one of those players who just gets up for big matches. She had her time away from the sport for a year or so, and it feels like every time now she comes back and you're like, oh, she's starting to get, a little bit on her decline. And then she gets in those big matches, lights come on, and she plays really well. So I like that Azarenka pick. I have the Anisimova as well as one of mine that I like. When I look at the 3 favorites, so the 3 top odds are on Swiatek plus 300. I don't really love the value there based on the way that she's played in the run up to the US Open. Obviously, she's the best player in the tournament. She's capable of, if she shows up in form, I don't really know who beats her. But she hasn't shown up in form it's been a couple months now since she's done that. Rybakina, who's coming off just a confidence-inspiring Wimbledon, where she played well and ended up winning the title. Man, her serve is dominant, and Jabeur got her down 1 set, love in the Wimbledon final, and she just cranked her serve and just took over that match. So that was really impressive. The one that I'm going to give and recommend that I like is Caroline Garcia. Garcia has been in awesome form running up to this. She won the Cincinnati Open on the women's side, and that is no small feat, as we talked about. That's a free-for-all when you look at those fields. And Garcia was mowing through a good set of players that were put up against her. So I really like her coming into this. The other one that I looked at and I was thinking, I never have any confidence in this person in big tournaments or getting very far. For some reason, she's not in the greatest form, but I kind of like the draw that Sabalenka has. And I feel like she might actually step up and play pretty well in this US Open. So I like that. And then I'm going to give you 2 others. The big one, we've said this woman in a couple of the other tournaments too. I'm going to stay with Jessica Pegula. I just think she, playing at home in the US Open, it feels like she's building to something. And I think this tournament is really where she can take what she's built on that foundation. She's home. I just feel like this is going to be a good tournament for her. So I have a good feeling about Pegula. Those are the ones I'm kind of jumping on as I see this, looking at it quickly and just checking out some of the favorites.
And I would agree with you on Caroline Garcia. You hit it on the head. She's coming in really on a roll, great form. I think she's a solid play right now. And your Pegula pick, it's almost getting to the point where I don't even know if she feels like it doesn't feel like a long shot anymore. She feels to me as though she's becoming a consistent quarterfinalist, someone you can bank on to really not struggle through the first 3 rounds. I'm not saying I think she's a guaranteed to always get to the semifinals, but she feels like that sure money quarterfinalist almost every major at this point.
Yeah, and the question is, will she break through and get to that next level? That's always the question. I feel like she's got that in her, and I feel like it's coming soon. why not at the end of the year in the US Open? She seems like one of the more steady players on the tour, like you said. And at home, it just feels like something where this might be her time to step up. The other two names I'm going to throw out there are Daria Kazatkina. She's at 35-1. She won the Silicon Valley tournament. That was when they first got on hard courts. She won that tournament, and she won a minor tournament. She won the tournament in Canada as well last week. Now, that's a double-edged sword. Sometimes I don't like when these players win tournaments like right before they get to the US Open, because that means that they've logged a lot of miles on their legs. But I feel like Kazatkina is another one who I think could break through and catch some momentum. And the last one I'm going to throw out here is Haddad Maia. I picked her to go further than, we were kind of wondering who she was at Wimbledon because she had a great run of form going into it. After she lost in the first round of Wimbledon, I'm kind of viewing her, she's not as advanced as Ons Jabeur is, but I'm viewing that loss in the first round as a learning experience, much as we talked about Jabeur learning from the French Open and kind of advancing further. I think when you're a really good player and you have that early loss, it really helps you refocus for the next tournament. So I like Haddad Maia as well. Just to give you some of those, Garcia's 14-1, Sabalenka 16-1, Anisimova 20-1, Pegula 25-1, Haddad Maia 25-1, Azarenka and Kasatkina are 35-1. Are there any other ones that you think of that I missed out of those, or that you missed saying?
I can't remember the odds on Leylah Fernandez, but I like the fact that she was a finalist here last year. I feel like Fernandez has a decent draw. Is she in the 15 to 25 region?
She's actually 35-1 right there with Kazatkina. Ostapenko's in the same range. Kontaveit and Azarenka are all 35-1.
Yeah, I like Fernandez, especially with the track record that she has in New York. I think for 35-1, that's pretty good value.
The other two we should talk about here, I'm not going to pick them, but Emma Raducanu, obviously, she won this last year. She's at 16-1. She has a pretty tough draw, and including she plays Cornet in the first round. That's one right away that she might not be able to get by. So that's going to be a really tough matchup for her right away. And the other one, I completely ignored her, and she made a great run in Wimbledon. She's probably my favorite women's tennis player. And she actually won the Toronto tournament. I just can't bring myself to pick her. I've got her getting bumped off, but Simona Halep. She's at 7-1, yep. And she's the second highest favorite. She's right behind Swiatek. I forgot to include her. The two things I would ask is, if I were to give you Swiatek, Halep, and Rybakina or the field, which one of those would you be tempted to take? You don't have to give away your pick to who you're taking. But we've been saying Swiatek versus the field. In the French Open, it was Swiatek over the field. We didn't care. In the Wimbledon, I said field over her. If you take those three at the top three highest, I think I'm still going to take the field with how wide open this is.
I'm gonna take the field as well, and I feel as though we'd have been crazy to think this was going to happen 4 months ago when we were making picks, that we would pass on Swiatek at any point. But I just have a feeling that there's someone in that 15-25 range that I think is going to break through. And I feel like the seal has kind of been broken, that there is no heavy favorite anymore. And now we're back to anybody can take this thing. And I'm kind of with you. The way my picks fell, I would take the field in that situation.
Yeah, we had a wild Wimbledon. I was just looking at some of the quarterfinals. Niemeyer, who I'd really never heard of. Maria. Maria, I think, made it to the semifinals. And it's like, you look at those names and you go, I was going, okay, I don't blame myself for getting these picks wrong, because I don't think anyone has a good beat on who these people are and how, what type of tennis they were playing coming into this. So it makes things interesting. Like you said, I think it's wide open as well. Probably now that we think that, I'm sure Swiatek will dominate and win. But
the last one I will point out, and to me, it's the first round women's matchup that I'm looking forward to the most. And I've already given you two of my favorites, Anisimova and Azarenka. The other one I'm going back to, especially because I said there'd be some passion plays, and I think that the crowd is going to be going ballistic for this one. Osaka and Collins, I think, is going to be an incredible matchup. I think it's going 3 for sure. I think it's going to be extremely intense. And I like Danielle Collins to win a few matches here at the US Open. I've got her over Osaka. I've seen that some people say Osaka's going to get back in form because she's at the US Open. I don't see that happening. I'm big on Collins, as you know, and I think after a poor showing at Wimbledon, I think she's ready to make a statement, and there's no better way to do it than in the first round versus Osaka.
So if you followed our previous two podcasts, we've had that match in the first round where we diverge and we go in these opinions. You nailed the first one last in the French Open. It was Anisimova versus Osaka. I thought Osaka might win that. You had Anisimova, good pick on your part. We talked through the men's one in Wimbledon. It was the upset that I picked with Cressy versus Felix Auger-Aliassime, who I actually really liked to go far, but I just didn't love the matchup against Cressy. I called Cressy in that, so that was such an impressive pick. I mean, I know we're 1-1, but I feel like there's an asterisk that gives you an advantage because that pick was so. I mean, you were on that from the jump. So I guess this will be the rubber match right here. Yeah, because I have Osaka winning that match, oddly enough. And then I will get to it, but I have her making a pretty decent run. I don't have a lot of confidence in that pick, but I will say this is the one place where she plays well. She loves the US Open. She's won 2 US Opens. She really kind of steps up her game. And I feel like she's been like kind of like a sports car, like trying to shift into the right gear. She's sitting in like third gear and she's just waiting to like get into fifth gear and just and this would be the match if she can beat Collins to do it. But I believe she's a slight underdog in that match, so that'll be a tough one, but really interesting to see. I love these matches where we have like the divergence and it's like, if this happens, it's crazy. If this happens, whole nother path.
Well, I'm calling Collins in this one, but to be honest, in watching this match, what I'm really looking for is I think this is a very important match for Osaka because she seems to be kind of fading away from the upper tier, and just to leave a good taste in her mouth and have a good experience here in the final major, I think it's very important for her to win this match. And I think what might actually help her, and I'm pulling up a Steve Geller here, talking up something and then going the other way. I don't want to pick against Collins because I've already said that's my pick, but it might help Osaka to come out of the gate with somebody that she has to get amped up for to get her rolling along the way.
You know, because she hasn't been seeded, because she took a little break away for good reason to try to, get refocused and feel better about everything that was going on, really get herself in the right place. She's been unseeded. So she's had some wild matchups in these tournaments where it's like, you're like, Osaka's playing this person in the first round. That's ridiculous. So she's been seeing this left and right. So maybe this is the time where she gets used to it. And then I think this is a perfect conversation to lead us into our next one. This match is probably going on as we're talking. But of course, we have to bring up Serena. Announces her retirement going into this, really going into the hard court play. And, that's the question. How long do we get to see Serena for? She's also playing with Venus, and Venus is also playing singles in this. How far do we think Serena can make it? Where do you have her getting to right now?
I have Serena winning her first round match, and that's it. I'm not going to buy into the hype of last go around US Open. To me, there's no way from a physical standpoint from the last time that I saw her compete that she's going to make up enough ground to find a way to make a run. And I know people are cheering for that. I know that's what everybody's looking for. But I mean, I even think the first round matchup is no guarantee. I have her winning, but I just don't see her getting past the elite competition after that. And she draws, the 2 seed overall. So
I'm going into this hook, line, and sinker. I agree. She has not looked very good in the run up. She looked terrible in Wimbledon. She was just ill prepared. And Harmony Tan actually played a pretty solid match against her to beat her in the first round. I think she won one match in the run up. She played Emma Raducanu, and Emma Raducanu beat her pretty handily. I think it was in Cincinnati. But what I like about it is she's played 3 or 4 matches at least. In Wimbledon, she had played 1 doubles match with Ons Jabeur, and that was it to warm up. I like the fact that she's actually played a little on hard court. She's taking it seriously. I think she wants one more good run. What better place for it to happen than New York? Only reason I have her actually winning in the second round is I just don't think Kontaveit is playing really well right now. And she seems ripe to be beaten by Serena. And that seems like the moment where everything will go crazy. I had her getting knocked out in the next round against Mukova. And then I was like, you know what? If she beats Kontaveit, maybe she'll beat Mukova, where I do have her losing in the 4th round. So I've got her winning 3 matches. I didn't want to go too crazy. This isn't a Jimmy Connors run here.
I was going to say, you're giving her a Jimmy Connors moment here.
And I remember as a kid in high school, I saw Chris Everett's final Grand Slam match. She made it, I think, to either the 3rd or 4th round, and Zina Garrison took her down. So I was thinking, you know what, this kind of reminds me of that. You know, this is like she'll get to this certain point, and then she's just not at a high enough level right now, the way she's playing, to get too much further than that. So I've got her going 4th round.
Yep.
The other question, and this is kind of tied into the Serena question, is who out of the U.S. players do you have going the furthest? We've got 18 U.S. players in. The seeded ones I'll just give you. We have Madison Keys, Coco Gauff, Allison Risk Amritage. Sorry, I'm probably saying that wrong, but that's the married name for her now. Then we've got Shelby Rogers, and I believe the other one, Sloane Stephens, is unseeded. Amanda Anisimova, Jessica Pegula, and those are the ones that are seeded. Who out of that do you think gets the furthest in this tournament?
I touched on it a little bit earlier, but to me, Pegula is a set it and forget it quarterfinalist. So I've got her making a strong run. I've got her in the quarterfinals. I feel very good about that pick. And then Coco Gauff is obviously going to play very well on this surface. And I think those are kind of the 2 best bets. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm big on Collins. I think Collins has a tougher road, and she could break down a little bit. And, you know, we'll get into some of the matchups, but she has a matchup that prevents me from putting her to the quarterfinals. I think she'll do fine, but my bread and butter picks for Americans are Pegula and Coco Gauff.
It's funny because I like Coco Gauff a lot, and I've ridden her pretty well in these first 2 tournaments. In the 3rd round, she's got Madison Keys if they both get there. That's a really tough matchup. I actually have Keys beating her. And so I have Pegula going the furthest, but I have Keys as the other person to keep in mind that she'll get pretty far. And I actually like Anisimova in this as well. I think Anisimova can make it to the quarters, and this gives away a little bit of what I've got going on in the top part of the bracket. But anyways, that's kind of my thought. I think Pegula is the one that I've going the furthest out of this right now. Yeah. And I think Keys is another one who I really like, and along with Anisimova, but I'll go with Pegula as well. I'm high on her going into this tournament. So
Pegula plays so well off emotion. For some people, it throws them off. They get too into their feelings, but it seems whenever Pegula gets into an emotional sort of rhythm, she just steps up her game, and I think she's going to have a great showing at the U.S. Open.
Yeah. I agree with that. You'll see that I agree with that as we move along here. So if we start off on the women's picks, do you want to go with round of 16 or do you want to go with quarters? Where do you want to start off having your just rolling down the list here?
How about we start in round 4 leading into who we take into the quarterfinals, and we can kind of go into that. I'll start off with, I've got, Halep to me seems like it's a pretty straight shot to get to the 4th round. And then, you mentioned I've got Keys versus Gauff, which I think will be an amazing match. Obviously a very tough ticket to get. I've got Gauff coming out of there. And then I've got Halep over Gauff in what I think will be a classic to get Halep to the quarterfinals. I've got Garcia versus Sakkari. I think that'll be another amazing contest. I was burnt a little bit on Sakkari the last time we did this in Wimbledon. So I'm going to go a different route this time. I'm going to take Garcia. You touched on it. I love the way she's playing coming into this. Her showing at the Western and Southern was fantastic. So I've got a Halep versus Garcia matchup in the quarterfinals. And then moving down on that side, Jabeur, I think, ends up in the quarters. And I've got her taking on Leylah Fernandez, who we mentioned, who I think is going to play really well. And so Halep, Garcia, Jabeur, and Fernandez are my quarterfinalists on the upper side.
On the upper side for me, I've got same thing Halep, but I've got Madison Keys upending Coco Gauff. And I actually have Keys beating Halep. So I have Madison Keys in the quarterfinals. I agree with your Garcia pick. I actually might have picked Sakkari. I have even Ann Lee for the U.S. I have her getting to the 3rd round. I think she might be able to upend Sakkari, who's been a little bit shaky lately. But I do have Sakkari getting to the round of 16 and losing to Garcia. The other upset I have is Shelby Rogers taking down Jabeur. Once again, I guess for the second straight tournament, I have my red, white, blue goggles on
You do.
again in terms
You
of what
do.
I'm doing. I've got Rogers playing Kasatkina, and I've got Kasatkina beating Shelby Rogers to get to the quarterfinals. The other one that I have, Ludmila Samsonova versus Serena Williams. That's my round of 16 pick, which would be an incredible story if Serena can get to that point. I think I might be reaching a little bit.
You
I
are going
actually
to
think
have some
Serena will
very
probably
happy
lose to
U.S. Open
Muchova.
fans. I can tell you that much. The U.S. Open
It would be a
fans
treat. It would be a treat.
excited about this.
They would. And I do think, I actually think she's going to lose to Mukova, but once I got her by Kontaveit, I was like, you know what, I'll just have her beat Mukova too. But Samsonova she's another one who's in really good form. She just won the Cleveland tournament last week, and she won the tournament in DC earlier. So I like the way she's playing right now. So in my quarters in the top half, I've got Keys, Garcia, Kasatkina, and Samsonova. And I'll just go right on to the round of 16 on the other side of the bracket, and then I'll let you do yours. This is where my upset comes in. This is where it's all going. And this is one to your heart, one of your favorite players. I've got Anisimova taking out Swiatek in the round of 16. I've got Kvitova versus Pegula, and I have Pegula winning that match. I have Azarenka, as you mentioned. I like the way she's playing. And then upset-wise, I've got Buskova coming through, beating Bencic as an upset. So Azarenka versus Buskova, and I've got Azarenka getting to the quarters. And then the other one, in the round of this is a really tough draw for Osaka. She has to first play Collins. Then after that, I think she's got an okay matchup there, but then she would have to play Raducanu if she can make it, or either that or Cornet. I've got Osaka winning that match. So I've got Osaka in the round of 16 against Sabalenka, which would just be just two players just slamming the ball as hard as they can at each other. But I have Sabalenka winning. So I have Sabalenka, Azarenka, Anisimova, and Pegula in the quarters on that side.
Wow. I'm going to go with, I've got the same matchup. I've got Swiatek versus Anisimova. I would love to go along with you on this one. You know how I feel about Anisimova, but I just think, I think this is about as far as she goes, and I can't go against Swiatek here. So I'm taking her to the quarters. I also have Kvitova versus Pegula. As I mentioned before, Pegula for me is a surefire quarterfinalist. I like her to beat Kvitova here. I'm with you. I've got Azarenka in the round of 4, but I've got her, and I had a tough time with Bencic and Buskova, but I took Bencic, and I've got her over Azarenka to get to the quarters. And then I've got Danielle Collins getting past Raducanu, getting to the round of 4, and then facing Rybakina. And I've got Rybakina coming through in a great match versus Collins. So I'm going to go Swiatek over Anisimova, Pegula over Kvitova, Bencic over Azarenka, and Rybakina over the American Danielle Collins.
So setting that up, what are your semifinals going off of that? You can tell that I've boxed myself into picking some weird stuff here going forward.
With Halep, I always feel as though you're all or nothing. So I decided to meet myself in the middle and have her end at the quarterfinals. And again, I'm going Garcia. I get nervous when I take somebody who's playing really good going into these tournaments, but I just think right now her game is incredible. I've got Garcia making the semifinals over Halep. Jabeur versus Fernandez. I like Leylah Fernandez. I really do. I think Leylah Fernandez and Garcia are both coming in here at the right time. So I'm setting up a Garcia Fernandez semifinal. Swiatek versus Pegula. I wanted to take Pegula here, but again, I feel as though she has the talent to get to the quarters, but maybe not finish off a semi or a final. So I've got Swiatek over Pegula, and then Bencic versus Rybakina. I really think Rybakina is a great play here. I like Bencic as well, but I've got Rybakina coming through. So my semis will be Garcia versus Fernandez and Swiatek versus Rybakina.
That'd be a great semis right there. And it's a little bit chalk, but not really. You mentioned chalk before. There's a few surprises in there. So I think that's actually would be a really fun semis. You're going to see mine gets flipped a little upside down here. So I've got Anisimova versus Pegula. I'm taking Pegula to win that. So I've got Pegula making her breakthrough here, getting the semis. The other weird one is I've got Sabalenka beating Azarenka. Sabalenka, I think, has maybe made the semis of a Grand Slam once. So that's breakthrough city for her too. The next one, I have Madison Keys upsetting Garcia, and I know I'm setting myself up there. I'm basically saying that Keys is going to beat Goff, Halep, and Garcia back to back to back, which sounds insane. And now that I say it out loud, it really seems like not a great pick. But Keys, I watched her play. I think it was in Cincinnati, and she was playing really well in that tournament. So I feel like she's coming in with some good form. And my other crazy one here, I mean, she's actually the favorite in this match, but I've got Kazatkina beating Samsonova. So I have Kazatkina, Keys, Pegula, and Sabalenka. I mean, if that comes through again, I will be a genius, but I don't know. But again, for the second women's tournament in a row, I find myself picking weird stuff, and I'm just kind of going with what my hunches are. So I guess I'll continue along.
If you put to win bets in on all of those, you're going to be sitting pretty no matter how it shakes out.
If they can get there, they might have all lost today while we were recording this. So. And I'm going to go even a little bit further with this. So I've got Pegula beating Sabalenka.
Wow.
And then I've got Kazatkina beating Keys. So I've got Kazatkina and Pegula. I mean, so just the fact that it's 35-1 and 20-1, I mean, that's got to be odds somewhere in the 200-1 range there. But that's what I have in the finals. What do you have in the finals?
I'm going to go with, I've got Rybakina over Swiatek. I don't feel like Swiatek has that same mojo she had early in the season. So I'm going to go with Rybakina. I think she takes that momentum from Wimbledon, keeps it rolling here, which is a little bit of a dangerous strategy, but I'm going to roll with it. And then in what I think will be a really good match, I'm going to take Garcia over Fernandez. So I've got Rybakina versus Garcia in the final, which I think you mentioned early before we even started, a couple flyers there. So we both got some outside of the box finalists heading into the US Open.
No doubt about that. And the one thing I will say is that's probably a good place to have Swiatek go out if you're going to have her, because to me, one of the things about her, if she's gotten to the finals, she's probably winning the finals. The bigger the moment gets, it seems like she raises her game. If she gets to the finals, she's playing well enough that she probably wins. So I agree with you. I don't think she's going to win this one. I'm just going to give you right now, I've got a 35-1 person winning this. So I've actually got Pegula's run ending against Kazatkina. So I'm picking Kazatkina. And honestly, if we look back at Wimbledon, I think Rybakina was probably a similar long shot. She was at least in the 25-1 range. So I think we see it again with Kazatkina. And Kazatkina was another one. Part of my reasoning was that she was one of those people who won a couple tournaments. And actually, the odd part is I think it was only a 250 tournament, but the Silicon Valley tournament that she won had a lot of good players in it. She made a good run, beat some good players to win that. So I just feel like she's playing pretty well right now. Is she playing well enough to win this? I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun to watch. If you can get that to shake out, we're gonna make a lot of people happy, and we're gonna make a lot of people money. So good luck on that one. In my final, I'm going to take Rybakina over Garcia. Like I said, kind of probably dangerous to go with a long shot in Wimbledon to come back-to-back Wimbledon US Open, but I just like her form, and I think she has amazing confidence right now. I like her road, at least the road that I set out for her in the way that the bracket fell for me. So yeah, Rybakina over Garcia for me, and obviously we're not going with the straight chalk when it comes to the finals.
I mean, the good part about Rybakina, as you said, is she's won one of these this year already. She's the fourth highest favorite in that. So she comes ready-made. And I actually think, I mean, Rybakina, Garcia, if those two are playing, that's going to be a high-level final. Those two are playing some really good tennis right now. So I would be excited to see that if it shakes out that way. So we'll go to the men's final, or men's side of the draw now as we go. And just looking at this, I was going to, I guess I'll start off giving some of the ones that I like. First of all, I guess let me ask this question. So two people have won majors right now at this point. One of them, Novak Djokovic, will not be playing in the US Open because of the vaccine mandates that the US has right now that just are kind of set in place, and he is not able to come in because of that, because he is not vaccinated. Then the other one, Nadal, has won the French and he's won the Aussie. So you've got those two taking up three of those tournaments. And then Medvedev is he's the favorite at plus 200. I'm going to ask the same question that I asked on the women's side. If I gave you Medvedev and Nadal versus the field, who would you take out of that choice?
I would take Medvedev and Nadal.
I'm right there with you.
I would. I really
I'm right there with you, and that will get us to what we're saying. I really like Nadal in this tournament. He did lose in his only action leading up to it, but he ended up losing to Coric, who actually won the Cincinnati Open. And at the time, Coric beat him early in the tournament. Everyone's going, "Oh, that's struggling. What is Rafael Nadal doing?" Well, Coric ends up winning it, and Nadal barely. He was almost a no-show that day. Like, he was not playing in typical fashion, and he still took him to 3 sets and almost won. And to me, it just shows you this whole year, whenever Rafael Nadal turns up the volume, I'm not sure anyone is there to match him other than maybe Djokovic when you're playing on hard courts. And I also think Medvedev is the other one who might be able to. So that's where I think those two versus the field makes a lot of sense to me. Do you have some other guys off the rails of that, off those two that you like for on the men's side?
I kind of have the same thing going with the men's side that I did the women's. I feel very chalkish in what I have getting to round 4. Kyrgios at this point isn't a long shot. You can't, we had our opportunity to break out Kyrgios at Wimbledon. You can't break him out here. I mean, he's one of the top favorites at this point to win the US Open. So despite the fact that I believe he's seated 23rd, you might as well take the 2 out in front of the 3, because it feels like he's a top 4 draw in the US Open. So for me, who I'm looking at is, and again, I have Van Rijthoven. I don't feel like he's that much of a reach anymore. He's playing amazing tennis. I've got him, winning several matches. I think he's got a lot of juice, a lot of confidence. The tournament that he won, where he went through Murderer's Row, really kind of, I think, opened a lot of people's eyes to what he can bring to the table. So he's a guy that I really like. Another one, probably my longest shot, is I like Daniel Evans. And he's not a guy a lot of people talk about, but I feel like he always kind of picks his spots and he gets on a roll. I've got him playing really well here at the Open, and I think he's got a pretty easy draw if he just plays his game and doesn't make a lot of mistakes. So he's a guy that I look at. And then two more I'll give you is TFO. TFO is a guy that I think, again, passion play. I think he'll get up for the US Open. I think he'll make a long run, which I know will make you happy. And then one more guy, and again, I'm going to say this, none of these feel like they're great reaches when Joker isn't in the tournament. And as much as we love Nadal, you just don't know physically how he will hold up after going through 3 majors. And, like we said, it's a grind. So another guy I'm going to give you is Sinner. Jannik Sinner's playing amazing tennis right now. And I know he's seeded 11, but it doesn't feel to me like he's playing 11 seed tennis. I feel like he's another guy that you can easily throw in the mix to get to a semifinal.
We talked about how Alcaraz kind of jumped that whole next gen crew going into the French Open. I actually feel like Alcaraz has taken a little step back, and Sinner has jumped over him and the next gen crew. And Sinner's kind of sitting there right behind Medvedev, Nadal, and Djokovic. And he's just saying, I'm ready when you guys finally stop winning. I'm ready to step up and be a guy who can win. But I don't see him beating any of those 3. But he's ready if like you said, if Nadal loses and Medvedev, who is slated to face Kyrgios in the round of 16, if either of those guys loses, Sinner is waiting there to jump on that opportunity. I completely agree with you. That's one of my favorite ones. One thing I'll say about Kyrgios that I just want a little caution for people is the one thing I like Kyrgios a lot. We know he plays Medvedev in round of 16. That's going to be tough. The only difficult thing for Kyrgios, first round draw, he's playing his doubles partner, Kokkinas. Yeah. I feel like Kyrgios thrives on just disrespecting his opponent and just it's me, I'm going to do my thing, I'm going to roll through you. He's won 2 doubles tournaments with Kokkinas in the lead up to it. I'm not sure if he can summon that energy, and he might struggle with Kokkinas just for that reason, because I feel like he really likes playing with that chip on his shoulder. I think he's just going to play that as if he's playing against his friend. And I don't know what that even looks like with Kyrgios, because it feels like every time he's playing somebody, he wants to throw a little shade their way, make them kind of feel like he doesn't care about who they are. And I'm just not sure he can do that with Kokkinas. On the other end, Kokkinas probably deep down is excited for the way Kyrgios is playing and wants him to do well. That's why I think it's such an interesting matchup in that first round. So I just want to bring that one up. The other guy I really like, and you're going to see me take him pretty far, man. If you want to give Kyrgios the credit for getting to the finals, the guy who got Kyrgios to the finals in Wimbledon was Fritz, because he played Nadal in that crazy match, and that Nadal didn't have anything left after that. Nadal barely squeaked out of that match. Fritz was this close to kind of breaking through, getting to the semifinal, and Fritz Kyrgios would have been fascinating to watch those two going at it with the championship. It kind of sucked. You wanted to see Kyrgios win that match in the semis to break through and really get the confidence. Honestly, that might have given him less of a chance to beat Djokovic. The fact that he didn't have that one match in the semis to say, yeah, I just beat Nadal, or I just beat Fritz, and now I'm really ready to go. He didn't get that opportunity. And I think that was something that, he probably disappointed him. The other ones I'm going to throw at you, I still think our guy FAA has something. The only thing I don't really like is he's in Medvedev's side of the quarters. And I just think he's going to have trouble getting by Medvedev, but I like him to make a decent run. And I can't believe Berrettini. He's not in good form, but it just feels disrespectful that Berrettini's 25-1 in this tournament. That dude is too good to be 25-1. And the last one I'm going to throw out there before I give you a couple long shots is Coric. Coric is your informed guy coming into this tournament. He's playing really well. He was a buzzsaw in that Cincinnati Open. He's ready. And from everything I've heard, I haven't really watched the guy play that much, but from the couple of things that I've listened to, he was a super talented guy back about 4 or 5 years ago who people were waiting for to break through, and he had injuries and he just didn't get there. Well, now it sounds like he's healthy. He's mentally there. He's ready to go, and he's ready to make his run. So I like him as well. So those are kind of my picks. And I've got a couple long shots as we go along. The two long shots, Carina Busta, he won the Montreal tournament and he also made a nice run. He's 65-1 in this thing. I don't think he's going to win this, but he's one of those guys, if the bracket falls apart, he could be sitting around. And the other US guy that I like is Korda. I just like the talent that he has. He's 65-1. He's not winning this thing, but I think he can make a decent run in this. So I know I threw out a huge list there, but those are all the guys I kind of had checked off on the men's side.
One of the things I like about a Busta play, though, and I think we've mentioned this on previous previews, is that Busta at 65-1, you don't need him to win the whole thing. But if you get a Busta to get to the semifinals, now you have an opportunity to hedge with whoever he's playing against because his odds are so long. So when you find a value like that, you don't necessarily have to get them all the way to the winner's circle. You just need to get them to the quarters, the semis, where you can find a way to hedge a little bit more on multiple angles because they've got such long odds. And obviously we know, one of my favorite things about Busta is, he was involved in the matchup with Djokovic that got him tossed from the US Open, but people forget Busta was taking it to Djokovic in that match.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason why Djokovic hit the ball in frustration, and he also lost him in the Olympics last year too. I think it was last year. So he can play. He can frustrate some guys and really get you going. So I do like him. I probably don't have him as far as what I'm saying indicates to him, because he's got a really tough third round match against Guy Monor, who's another person I like too. Let's go to the U.S. Men's side. And who do you have kind of getting the furthest out of the U.S. men here?
Well, you'll be happy with this one again. When I think back to Wimbledon, obviously Kyrgios was a huge story and his run. But my lasting image from Wimbledon was watching Fritz's reaction when he realized that he had basically given the match to Nadal away. That tie break that he had where it looked like he was going to finish everything off and he just kind of fell apart. I think he comes into the US Open and the story is going to be, is that still weighing on him to a point where we see him get upset early? Or is he going to use that as motivation and really just blow through some competition because he realizes he should have been in that matchup against Kyrgios. He should have had a chance to push Kyrgios and see if he could get through instead of getting, the walkover from Nadal. So I think Fritz does the latter. I think he shows up ready to play. I've got him blitzing through some competition. I think Fritz is a guy from the American side that's going to make quite a run. I hate to say I don't have a ton of Americans making a deep run, but Fritz would be my guy there.
I'm in agreement with you. I'm not sure how the answer can be anyone else but Fritz. I've got a couple guys making decent runs. I don't think I have the Americans making quite as much noise as they did in Wimbledon. One that I will say, and I'm usually not optimistic on my guy Tiafoe, but I actually have him getting to the round of 16 now. He's got a pretty difficult matchup in the first round against Marcus Giron. I do have him winning that. And then he's got another tough matchup against either Eimer or Kubler, those are two tough players as well. I have him getting through that. And then I have him beating Schwartzman. I think that's a big ask for TFO. He's actually been playing pretty well in the run up. The problem with him is he can never string 3 or 4 of these together.
Yep.
He had one of the best matches of the lead up in DC against Kyrgios. He had 6 match points against him and just couldn't put him away. Kyrgios beat him. He was playing Fritz. He was up 4-0 in the 3rd set against Fritz. Fritz came back and beat him. And then another one, Berrettini, he actually did close that one out, but it was probably a lot harder than it should have been. That's the problem with TFO, is he's so talented, but sometimes he makes these matches a little bit harder than they need to be. But I think he's ready for a good 5-set knockdown, drag out matches. And when you get him in the 5th set, as long as he is in shape and feeling okay, I think he's somebody who can do something. But Fritz is the obvious one. I have him going the furthest by a mile out of these guys. And I think those are the only 2 I actually have in the round of 16.
I've got TFO in the round of 16 as well. And one thing with TFO is, we talked about emotion earlier. If he's not a guy that I really can bank on to necessarily use the emotion in the right way, if he can, I mean, the sky's the limit, because they're going to get behind him the way he plays. If he can use it in a positive manner, he can get on a deep run, but I just don't want him to get to the point. It seems like sometimes the emotion can get the best of him, even when things are rolling well, and he might get too emotional. So it'll be interesting to see, but man, he's so close. There have been so many matches where it looked like he had people dead to rights and they find a way to escape. I just hope TFO can put something together here.
Yeah, it's funny because unless you watch the tour from week to week, and I really didn't start doing that until a couple of years ago, but you realize he is one of the most popular people on the tour. Like, I mean, he was playing in Portugal of all places, and they loved him. They were rooting for him over everybody. And I think, he, like you said, he's one of those people that if he's playing well and the crowd gets behind him, he can go a long way. But he just makes it very hard for himself, and hopefully he doesn't do that here and gets to the point where we have him. I'm going to get to our picks overall, but I just was wondering, because I have a couple that I wanted to share, but any upsets that you have in the first round that stand out, or do you want me to share some of my nonsensical picks first?
Well, you talked a little bit about Diego Schwartzman. I don't like the way he's playing at all right now. I got Jack Sock knocking him off in the first round. I just don't like his game. He seems like he's off. The guy that we've been banking on the past 2 or 3 years that just puts that pressure on you, and he makes you make so many unforced errors. I haven't seen that guy. I don't like him advancing. I've got Jack Sock knocking him off there. Trying to find a couple others. If you've got some, go ahead and let me know.
I'll give you my crazy one, and then I can go to some of the others. This guy's playing actually pretty well, and he's made it pretty far in some tournaments. But I really like Oscar Adi. Is a German who he always shows up in that first round, plays guys tough, and I just keep waiting for him to beat somebody. I'm picking him to be Hurkacz and actually get all the way to the round of 16, because I just like the way he's playing. I think if he wins that match, he can really build off it. It's a crazy pick. I'm not sure it'll come through. But that's my big upset pick that I have. There's one other in here, and I'm trying to search for it while we're talking. But that was my main one that I saw that I had as a pretty big upset pick. I have Korda getting to the 3rd round, but I don't think that's much of an upset. The other guy who I just want to mention, the U.S. side, is Ben Shelton. He played at Florida, won the national championship last year, and he's actually been in a pretty good run of form. I'm trying to remember, he played somebody, a top player, really tough in one of the 1,000 tournaments. And he's qualified for this tournament, so that's a good one. I gave you the cautionary tale on Kyrgios, but I still have Kyrgios winning that match. And then I believe there's nothing else that I see here that jumps out like crazy to me. I had a couple matches circled that, like the Carina Busta, we talked about him being good. He plays team in the first round, and that's going to be interesting. His team is starting to play a little bit better. You can see it coming around. I don't think he's quite there yet. It feels like when he shows up next year for next year's tour, he might be kind of back to where he is, but he's not where he was like 6 months ago, where it's like, I don't even know if he could beat anyone. Now he's playing, he's getting to 2nd and 3rd rounds of tournament. He's kind of in that mold where Andy Murray was last year when he was trying to come back from his hip and play well. So that's an interesting one. And I think I circled a few others, like Draper versus Rusevori, I think is an interesting one. And And Cerundolo versus Andy Murray is actually a pretty interesting one as well. So that's some of the ones that I think we've got as kind of interesting first round matchups. I don't see any other upsets. Goff and Musetti, I think, is another. That's my other upset. I have Goffin taking out Lorenzo Musetti. Not a huge upset, but Musetti is seeded. So that's some of what I had when I was looking at this.
One of my last ones I'll make, and this is we'll see if this one pans out. I'm going to play Steve Johnson here over Dimitrov, and then I've got him beating Nakashima, which I love the way Nakashima played at Wimbledon. But Steve Johnson, another guy that I think might get caught in the moment and start playing really good tennis, especially being American, and maybe they might get behind him a little bit. And then a guy that I have getting knocked off very early that I don't have a ton of confidence in is Casper Ruud. I just don't think this is a surface that he's going to do much on. So.
Yeah, I've got Ruud going out to Fritz later. We'll talk about that as we get in there. And then Nakashima, actually, I do kind of like, but you're right, Steve Johnson, I almost pulled the trigger on that one as well. So that's an interesting first round matchup as well. The other one that last one I'll point out is, I don't think it's an upset, but Sebastian Baez, who's kind of one of those next gen guys playing Alcaraz in the first round. That's not an easy first round matchup. On clay, that would be a really difficult matchup. On hard court, I think Alcaraz gets through. But Alcaraz is kind of an interesting road that we'll get to as we make our picks further. I guess since you started out last time, I'm going to start off with my round of 16 and work my way through, and then we'll get to where we want to go. So I'm going to start off on the top side of the bracket. This is going to be a battle, and when they played earlier, Kyrgios actually won this match, but I have Medvedev versus Kyrgios in the round of 16 on the top. The other matchup right below them, I have Alex de Minaur versus Felix Auger-Aliassime. Then I have Stefanos Tsitsipas versus Berrettini, which that will be a great match if it happens. And then the other one is I have Taylor Fitz versus Casper Ruud. So that's my top side of the bracket when I'm looking at the round of 16. I'll get through to the quarterfinalists as we go, but I just wanted to see what you have kind of on the top side of that bracket.
I'm following suit with you as well. I've got Medvedev versus Kyrgios, which will be an amazing rematch. I want to see that so much. That'll be a great rematch when they face off. I've got Carina Busta versus FAA as well. Tsitsipas versus Berrettini, and Fritz versus Van Rijthoven, which, I would love to watch all four of those matches.
That would be fun. That would be fun to see Van Rijthoven make that run. So you're Van Rijthoven and I'm Adi. I actually like your upset pick in the round of 16, probably a little more than mine. What do you have on the bottom side of the bracket?
On the bottom side, I'm going to go with Hurkacz versus Sinner, who we've already talked about, and it sounds like we both think Sinner is going to make a nice run here. My upset pick to do some damage, I'm going to take Daniel Evans versus Alcaraz. I'm going to go with Cam Norrie, who I just think is playing really well and is kind of starting to get into that Pegula mode of being a regular guy that advances through the first 3 or 4 rounds. I've got Norrie versus Rublev. And then on the bottom side, finishing it off, I've got Tiafoe versus Nadal, which would be a fantastic match to watch.
I'd be excited to get Tiafoe to that point. Mentally against Nadal, I would have to hope that he's worn out a little bit for Tiafoe to have a shot at that. But I have that same matchup. I've got Shapovalov, even though I don't think he's played all that well against Norrie. I do have Kwan. That was one of my other upsets in the second round. I have Kwan taking out Rublev in the upset there. He's had a couple tough matchups against guys as well. So I've got Norrie versus Shapovalov there. I'm going with form here. This is actually another big upset in round of 3. I've got Korch taking down Alcaraz.
Wow.
I just like the form that he's in. And Alcaraz, he's just not like, he's kind of in a place where I think he's lost a little bit of the confidence that he had earlier in the season.
Do you think that he may have gotten too much acclaim too fast after he went on that run? And then it feels like he's a little off right now. And I can definitely see where you're coming, especially when he has a matchup like that, which to me, the way Korch is playing, that's going to be a tough matchup for Alcaraz.
It will. And the other thing too is I don't know if it's as much about Alcaraz as it's about the other guys. When you're 18 and all of a sudden you get the bullseye circled around you, that's so young to have the bullseye on your head. And Emma Raducanu, I think, is going through the same thing on the women's side. It's like, let them grow up first, but it's like they're 18-year-old kids and everyone's like, I'm taking out Alcaraz. Medvedev was talking stuff about Alcaraz in the French Open because he's like the famous Carlos Alcaraz. They are gunning for him because no one wants him to cut ahead of line in them. So I think that's interesting. Like we said, I like Sinner too. And this is my big upset of the tournament that I've got Oscar Oddie in the round of 16. Crazy pick. If it goes through, I'll pat myself on the back. If it doesn't, I'll just accept the fact that I'm taking a crazy leap and it's not going to go anywhere. I'll go quarterfinals on this part of I'll go quarterfinals all the way around, then I'll let you go. I've got Sinner beating Oddie, having his run to an end. We got Coric beating Evans. Like you said, I like Evans too. He's played really well in this run up as well. I feel like he's found his form, and he had been struggling to find his form up until like about 2 months ago. And now I feel like he's found it. Another Brit, I've got Norrie getting to the quarterfinals. Me and you have been high on Norrie all year, and he's been pretty reliable. And then I've got Nadal. So Sinner, Coric, Norrie, Nadal. And then on the other side, I think Medvedev gets Kyrgios this time around. I really like Medvedev's fortitude in the U.S. Open. I kind of feel like he's starting to make it his home, as odd as it may sound. Ever since he flipped off all the fans and they booed him, and then he earned their respect in the finals, I think he really likes this tournament now. Felix Auger-Aliassime, if he wasn't facing Medvedev, I might have him do what you had him doing at the Wimbledon and maybe get a little bit, have a chance to threaten to the semis. And then I've got Berrettini taking out Tsitsipas. A little bit of a reach there because Berrettini's not in great form, but I think he'll find it. And then Taylor Fritz, I've got beating Casper Ruud to get to the quarterfinals.
This is going to be really, really interesting, and I'll kind of work backwards from what you just said. Medvedev versus Kyrgios, another one of these matches I think everybody would love to see. And I'm with you. I think Medvedev, there's just something different about him at the U.S. Open. I love the way he plays here. The match he had against Nadal a few years ago was insane to work his way all the way back. Being able to do what he did to Djokovic when he was on the precipice of history, that was insane to win in 3 sets. He is a stone cold killer at the U.S. Open. And I think if you're going to bet against him here, you better be ready for your money to go out the window because he's going to play well. I don't think Kyrgios gets him again. And the other thing with Kyrgios is I think we've got to the point where Kyrgios to me is like one of those stocks that you buy at 10 and it runs up to 30. Don't wait for it to go to 60. Sell it before it goes back down to 10. I'm selling Kyrgios here, so I'm going to take Medvedev over Kyrgios. I've got FAA. Here we go again. Knock on wood. I've got him taking out Busta, and it'll be an FAA Medvedev matchup. Berrettini over Tsitsipas. I think Berrettini, after missing, with COVID, comes back and plays really well, and I've got him facing Fritz as well. I think Fritz is going to be ready to go. I think he gets on a tear. Medvedev, FAA, Berrettini versus Fritz. And then did you get to the lower half? You did the lower half, right?
I did.
I'm going Sinner. I think Sinner has a great draw. I've got him over Hurkacz. I've got Alcaraz over Evans, who has a great run. I'm going to bet on Alcaraz here. I don't feel great about it because it feels as though in a major, he goes to 5 sets against almost everybody. So he could get worn down, but I'll take him past Evans. I love Norrie. I love the way he plays. I think he's not going to be gun shy here at the Open, and I think he's going to play well. I got him past Rublev. And then I just don't think that TFO is a great matchup against Nadal. I think Nadal should have his way there. And so I've got Sinner, Alcaraz, and then Norrie versus Nadal.
Who's your semifinals out of that?
And then in my semifinals, I just don't think I don't think he's got the juice to get by Medvedev. Medvedev is so strong here. I think he's coming in on a mission after missing Wimbledon. I've got Medvedev to the semis where he'll take on Berrettini, who I think is going to have a really tough match against Fritz, but I'm going to give him the slight edge there. Medvedev versus Berrettini in the semis. And then on the lower side, I've got Sinner over Alcaraz. I just think Sinner's playing better tennis. And as we've said, Alcaraz, you just can't count on. And then Norrie versus Nadal. Again, I think this is a good matchup for Nadal. I'll take Nadal over Norrie. So it will be Medvedev versus Berrettini and Sinner versus Nadal.
2 things I want to point out about the quarterfinal stuff that you've said. Alcaraz, I actually like that pick, even though I picked against him, because I think he actually has a lot less pressure on him in the U.S. Open here than he has at Wimbledon, French Open. French Open, everyone was talking about him winning the thing. And like he was a prohibitive favorite to win the thing. That was a lot of pressure. And then at Wimbledon, I think people, he wasn't comfortable on grass. People were talking about what do we expect out of him and all that. So he had a lot of pressure there. I think now he's had a chance to get settled back into the season. And I think he's ready to kind of show off his skill. The only thing I like is in the run up, to me, similar to Swiatek, he just hasn't shown the same gusto that he had at the beginning of the at the beginning of the tennis season. And like you said, for Kyrgios, yeah, I think there's three people that when Kyrgios is like feeling good about himself, when he's feeling good about himself, he is really hard to beat. And we saw it in the Wimbledon finals. Djokovic is probably one of the only three people right now that I feel like can shake off a really good Kyrgios and still figure out a way to beat him. Nadal is obviously the other one, and I feel like Medvedev is one, at the US Open at least, is one who he can say, all right, I know all the momentum's going against me. I know this guy's serving an ace every other shot around. I'm still going to figure out a way to solve this puzzle. Those are the three guys that I think can do it. And that's why I agree with you on what you're saying with Medvedev. So I think those are both good points with you. For my semifinals, I've got Sinner beating Coric. And then I've got Nadal beating Norrie. So that one kind of goes as planned, no surprise. The one surprise I guess I have here is I think this is where Fritz makes his breakthrough. I got Fritz going to the semifinals. So Fritz and Pegula are my American breakthroughs in this tournament. Well, that'll either look really good or look really weird. And then I've got Medvedev beating FAA. Medvedev really hasn't played that well in the run-up. He did win one tournament, I think like a month or so ago. He won the one in Mexico, which was being played at the same time as the DC tournament. And then I think he lost in the finals of another one. He's playing okay, but not great. But like you said, I feel like he's going to turn on the lights in the US Open and he's going to get excited. And full disclosure, that is the one result that I did see today. So I know at least won his first round matchup. So I won't look like a complete idiot yet. So I've got Medvedev, Fritz, Sinner, and Nadal. And I think I'm probably going in the same direction as you, but I'm going to give you the finals. I've got Medvedev versus Nadal. And what I will say here, I'll just go to my champion here. Okay. I've got Medvedev beating Nadal. I think Nadal is the guy who is just impossible to beat this year, but I almost view this very similarly to last year. Nadal has battled and scraped this entire season. It's a miracle that he's even won two, but it's because he's the greatest mental champion I think we've ever seen. You could say Federer might be just a more natural tennis player than him. You could say Djokovic might, just have a few more tricks up his sleeve. But Nadal is the guy, I view him like Michael Jordan. It's like he will do whatever he can to beat you. But I think last year we saw Medvedev stand up to a challenge like that with a tired Djokovic. And I think I see him doing that again with Nadal. If he gets all the way to the finals, he's going to be exhausted. And I look for Medvedev, who learned how to conserve his energy last year and save his best for last, and he did so. And so I have confidence in him to do him. So I'm going to pick the favorite here and take Medvedev to win the US Open.
We've got three of the four similar for the semifinals. And what I find interesting, whether you go with your pick or mine, Berrettini, is Medvedev, Berrettini, Sinner, and Nadal all have something to really fight for here. I mean, Medvedev kind of coming back and establishing that the US Open has kind of become his tournament and that whole Wimbledon deal was a joke. Berrettini, who I think is one of these guys too, still trying to break through. I'm hoping that Wimbledon wasn't a setback that affects him here. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. I think Sinner is the closest thing I've seen to the next guy who's going to be a breakthrough. And for him to do it here would be amazing. And then Nadal, he's undefeated in majors so far this year. I know he's only won 2 of the 3, but he hasn't been beaten. So I think these are, if we end up with my final four or your final four, everybody's going to be happy. I'll start on the top. Medvedev versus Berrettini. I think this is about as far as Berrettini can go. I don't think that missing Wimbledon is going to allow him to make a run to the finals. And I think Medvedev's too strong here. I don't actually think this would be that great of a match. I think Medvedev would handle Berrettini fairly easily. So I've got Medvedev in the championship. And then on the lower half, Sinner versus Nadal. I think Sinner's loss to Djokovic, the way that it happened at Wimbledon, is a building block for him. I don't think it's going to be a hurdle that he can't clear. And I just don't have confidence that Nadal can go the distance. I think this is about as far as he can go. Granted, if he had an easier opponent in the semifinals, I might take him to get to the finals. I can't do it here. I think Sinner is ready to make the jump. I don't think Nadal, it's so much wear and tear on his body. The injuries that he's starting to get now aren't even injuries that we're familiar with. It's a big ask to get through all these matches. I've got Sinner knocking off Nadal, so we get a Medvedev versus Sinner final. And as much as I'd like to take Sinner to break through, I think Medvedev is going to be the king of New York City. As you pointed out, ever since he had that that run-in with the fans. It's kind of been his tournament. I don't see that changing. I think he really wants to make a statement. I also think he wants to make a statement that I'm not one of these guys who wins a major, and then you don't see me do anything for a long time. I think he wants to get in this pattern of, I'm going to win majors every year, and here's where I'm going to throw down the gauntlet. I've got Medvedev over center and capturing the US Open title.
Because of the weirdness of Medvedev not playing in Wimbledon, of Nadal not really playing in anything else but the majors this year, of Alcaraz having the breakthrough early on, I think there's like 3 or 4 different guys who could actually be number one if weird things happen in this tournament. And that's what I find interesting about this, is to see how far these are. But I do think that's something that Medvedev takes a lot of pride in, although it's been kind of weird. And technically Djokovic, well, I don't know. I mean, if Djokovic played, he might have his right to number one. If he had been able to play at the Australian Open, which is his tournament, if he's playing in this, maybe he does do that. And this tournament would be really interesting if Djokovic was in it. But Medvedev can't control that, just like he can't control the political stuff that went on at Wimbledon that didn't allow him to play. And I think he's done a good job of controlling the controllable on his side of the net. And he's just turned into that type of a player. And I think he's ready to just make that statement of, nope, I'm the number one guy right now. Nadal and did beat me in the Aussie Open. He beat me in another tournament, but I'm ready. I'm ready now. And I think he's going to do that. I think that's kind of where he was last year when he saw really a gassed Djokovic get to the finals. And I, like you said, I just can't imagine Nadal getting to the championship and not being completely gassed. And to beat Medvedev, he is going to have something in the tank. Even in the Aussie Open, he was on fumes and he somehow won that. That is not happening again. He's going to have everything in the reserve ready to go to win that championship. So I agree. I think we both like Medvedev. And interesting, you've got Rybakina repeating, and I've got Kasatkina, which is going to be interesting. So yeah, these should be interesting tournaments. The women's side's a little bit more open. The men's side, it's always hard not to go chalk on the men's side.
No, it really is. And I will get back to your Medvedev Nadal point. I think if Djokovic were to play here and he were to get to the final and they offered him either Medvedev or Nadal, I think he would take Nadal. I really do. I think Medvedev is a guy that if Djokovic was here, we would still look at and say, this could be Medvedev's tournament. I mean, there's something special about him at US Open. He can really solidify that if he goes out and closes the deal in this tournament.
Yeah, it also feels like he's getting to the point where, Nadal, there was a point in time when he was at his most dominant where like he'd win all the lead ups to the French Open and he'd win the French Open. He'd just dominate. But lately he's lost a couple of those and still won the French Open because he's so good. And I'm starting to feel like Medvedev is getting there in the hard court. He had missed a whole chunk of the season because of all the England events that he couldn't play in. So he had to kind of get back up to speed. He didn't win, like dominate going through it. I think he's done that a couple times in the past where he's won a couple of those lead up events or 1 or 2 of them. This time he's played okay, but not great. And you kind of wonder, but I just feel like on hard court, he might be the best player in the world on hard court. It's probably a combination of him or Djokovic. It's hard to tell with Djokovic this year just because all this stuff hasn't let him do it, So
Djokovic ends up missing the 2 hard court, majors. So
I know. And then the last thing we'll say is, if Nadal gets this far, if he gets to the semis, 23, he's sniffing it. I think he's got one more French Open in him. Yep. And man, he really has the opportunity to open up ground on that greatest ever conversation because he's, like we said, Nadal, Medvedev, or the field. It's Nadal, Medvedev. We both said that. So, I mean, to me, I'm saying if it's not Medvedev, I think it's Nadal. So that to me is interesting in the sense if he find him in the finals, that conversation ramps all the way back up. And yeah, I'm trying to think of the last time, I think we've had finals with either Nadal or Djokovic in it going, all the way back to, the middle of like 2019, right? Basically. Yep. I mean, last year it was all Djokovic. This year it's all Nadal or Djokovic. So those guys, while people are kind of saying, okay, they're getting towards the end, they still know how to win. And when you put them in that spot, they do it.
Well, and what's really interesting, and we didn't touch on this, but if you look at a potential second round matchup for Nadal, Fabio Fognini in 2015 at the US Open was down 2-0 to Nadal and came back and won. those two, and there was a little bit of bad blood going on in that match. If you go back and watch it, if those two end up matching up, Nadal can't afford 4 or 5 set matches early on. He's got to run through these in 3. And the Fognini match would be amazing if they meet in the second round. I know Fognini's not playing great tennis, but he might step it up here when he's facing Nadal at U.S. Open.
Well, and even Kecmanoff, he faces him in the 3rd round.
Yep.
Yeah, like we said, we got Tiafoe or Schwartzman and Norrie. Like those guys could all. I don't think any of those guys beat Nadal, but they could all take a set off him. There's a couple there that might be able to push him to 5. And to me, Nadal is like a nice sports car here, and it's like you want him to try to get through this journey smooth and keep that tank of gas as full as you can.
Yep.
1 set gets taken, tank gets a little lower. 2 sets get taken, tank gets a little lower. And like I said, I just don't think he can get to the semifinals by like battling through all these 2-set, 5-set, 4-set matches. He needs it to be pretty clean so that he has the energy left to step it up. That being said, if there's anyone who can pull it in reserve, it is Nadal. So it will be interesting.
For sure. No, it's going to be a lot of fun.
So that's what we got. Once again, like I said, we both have Medvedev on the men's side. We both have Medvedev. I have Medvedev beating Nadal. You have Medvedev beating Sinner. On the women's side, you have, I believe, Rybakina beating Garcia, and I have Kasatkina beating Pegul. We'll see where we go with those. I'm expecting to turn on the TV any minute now once we sign off here and see that 3 of my big bets have lost. But for now, I think we've done a pretty good job. We've given you men's champions, the 2 that we've picked. We gave you Swiatek earlier, and we gave you some good advice not to pick Swiatek in Wimbledon. So this is it for the U.S. Open. We'll see how everything goes. And thanks again for joining. And we will try to get back here for some college football later on in the week and give you some of our picks as we head towards week 1. Obviously, week 0 had a couple games as well, but we'll try to get that up next and go from there. Thanks for joining in and doing this.
So long, everybody.